Hello again, my friends, and welcome once more to the Invisible College. Now, if you're new to this channel, the Invisible College is an esoteric school, which means we go into depth on all subjects esoteric, particularly with relationship to Christianity. A lot of people imagine that we don't really have an esoteric tradition in the West like they do in India, say, or China. But that's very, very far from the truth. The Western way is Christian in essence, but it also draws inspiration from other previous civilizations, particularly Egypt, but also Persia and obviously the biblical Israel. So it's a broad area that we're investigating and looking at, and looking for the real truth, the inner truth that you don't find in general discussion, not even in churches and places like this where you might have thought that you would find such things. You can find much, much more about this if you look at the previous lectures we've done, particularly the open ones, which you will find now on a new channel that I've set up, a new website I should say. It's called invisiblecollege.uk. It's Invisible College, that's all one word, .uk, and I'll put that title down the bottom in the comments section. But it is something new, and you'll find there lists of the different lectures in order within subject area, and it's much, much easier to find this information there than just scrolling through the YouTube videos where they're all jumbled together and they're all mixed up. So I recommend you go and have a look at that, and that applies also if you're returning a visitor to this website. Go and have a look at that website, invisiblecollege.uk, because you'll find there a lot more detail and information, both about the college itself. We're developing the website, and more will be coming, but also the chance to go back and have a look at any programs that you missed before. Anyway, we've got a great one for you today. It's called The Truth About Angels. This picture depicts Saint Michael, the Archangel, casting Satan and the fallen angels into hell. It's a popular subject for artists, particularly in the Renaissance period, depicting the fall of the bad guys being cast into hell. Wouldn't we all like to see that today? Clearly, if not all angels are good, then they're not automatons, but have at least some degree of free will. If this were not true, then they could never have rebelled against God in the first place. Now, I put that in there because I was taught when I was a little boy going to school, and I was brought up as a Roman Catholic, and we had a lot of religious instruction. But I was taught that angels, they don't have no free will. So, but if that was so, then they could not fall, could they? They could not make the decision to rebel against God. I'm assuming you know something about the Bible and the Christian understandings of the Bible, the rebellion of Satan and the eating the apple and all that. They could not have done all this if they were just automatons, programmed just to obey. Yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir. They must have some degree of free will to do that. So you can divide then between good angels, the ones who are on the side of God, and the bad angels who rebelled and were cast down. So that's something that I think needs to be said at the start, because it puts more things into context. It is a Christian doctrine that we each of us have a so-called guardian angel. And that's a nice picture here I found. The guardian angel, the woman is crying, looks like her son has been hurt, and the guardian angel is comforting them. Meanwhile, there's a bad guy angel lurking in the background there on the right-hand side, Perhaps he caused the trouble that made this happen. Such angels, that's the good ones, the guardian angels, are usually depicted as gentle, effeminate entities, more like a kindly woman friend than a warrior. Yes, and that's not necessarily true either. They can be very, very strong, tough people, or angels, and actually you don't only necessarily have just one. Their primary function is to help us overcome temptation. Yes, you see the bad guy there. We're all the time being tempted to do things that we shouldn't, and your guardian angel will help you at those times if you will turn and ask for help. Their counterparts are the demonic entities who try to lure us into sin. Well, we all know that that's like, don't we? The entity who makes you or encourages you to do something wrong. And you probably have friends like that as well, so-called friends. We all know about that, and sometimes you have to recognize that and resist. Thus, our lives are a constant battleground where we have to choose between these influences. Will we listen to the voice of our guardian angel, or instead the voices of the demons who tempt us to sin? And sin means, basically it means that which is going to stop us being able to get to heaven. That's to put it in a nutshell. This earth is also a school. And to get off here, you have to graduate. And that means raising your vibration. We'll talk about that later on in the school itself. But it's all to do with vibration and to do with developing higher bodies. And that also is something I'll be talking about later. If you don't do that, if you're constantly sinning all the time, falling below the level, you won't have the level of vibration that you need to get off this world. You know, it's like Elon Musk with his big rockets. They've got to be powerful enough to get off the gravity of the earth. And it's kind of like that with souls. You know, if we don't have enough power in us, we don't have enough resource, we can't escape the gravitational pull of the material world. So it's a very important consideration. Now here's a picture of the Annunciation, the Cortona altarpiece by Fra Angelico, 1433-4. I put this picture in, or I chose this particular one because I've actually seen it. I've been to Cortona a few years ago, and it's a beautiful painting placed up very high in the little chapel that it's in. And you can see here the angel Gabriel. In this famous early Renaissance painting, we see the angel Gabriel appearing to Mary. Yeah, there's the angel with wings. Angels are always depicted, or nearly always, with wings. And there's Mary. She's nearly always depicted wearing blue with a red undergarment. He asks her if she is willing to become pregnant by the divine providence. Yes, the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary, and she conceived by the Holy Ghost. You've probably heard that in the prayer. So the angel Gabriel is asking her, will you take this soul of Jesus into your womb to nurture him and give birth to him so he can come on earth? This is an awesome responsibility, especially as Mary is an as yet unmarried virgin. The birth of Jesus will be a supernatural act, and that will be difficult to explain to our family and friends. Yeah, can you imagine? Poor old Mary, yeah? She says, be it done unto me according to the word of the Lord. And she becomes pregnant. Now she's then got to explain to everyone why she's getting a bump. And she says, no, I haven't slept with anyone. This is the Lord's doing, this is God's doing, that I'm pregnant. And they all going to go, yeah, come on, who was he? So it's a difficult situation that she's in, and you know, an enormous sacrifice in many respects, because she's casting herself into a situation where people are going to regard her as a fallen woman. And in that day and age, that was something that you didn't want to be. You know, it's different today. Everyone sleeps with other people before they get married, but in those days, no, you might even get stoned to death for it. So this is a big deal. So it's a major angel that comes and speaks to her like this, and well, she agrees, and actually she probably agreed to this before she was even born herself, and in fact I'm sure she had, but we'll come to that sort of thing later. Now, we see here the natural and the supernatural worlds. We have the world of nature at the bottom here, governed by the laws of nature, studied in natural philosophy or science. That natural philosophy is what they used to call science in the old days. You very rarely hear that term today, but natural philosophy is what science really is, study of nature. And then we have the world of supernature. It's governed by the laws of supernature, and it's studied in supernatural philosophy. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that there was a supernatural philosophy, but that should be what's taught in religion, but it rarely is. You know, the understanding of the supernatural world, the supernatural beings around us, the supernatural the properties of the supernatural world. That's something we should be studying, but we aren't. So, at the center of the confusion about invisible entities, and I'm talking about angels particularly here, the division of reality between the world of nature and the world of supernature. There is a division. Our modern day culture of materialism denies the very existence of the supernatural world, doesn't it just? You say that you believe in angels, and a lot of people will snigger and say, come on, pull the other leg. It is like a blind man denying the existence of light. Without the eyes to see it, it may seem that light does not exist either. I'd like to point that point that, you know, we take for granted that I look around and I see things. But if you're born blind, if you have your eyes shut, you can't see any of it. And you might not think that there is such a thing as light, that it reflects off surfaces, it reflects off things, you can see things, you can measure distances mentally by the light that's coming off them. If you're blind, you don't have that facility. You've got hearing, and you've got touch, and you've got smell, but you haven't got sight. And it's kind of like that with the supernatural. If you have your eyes shut, or you don't have a supernatural awareness, you might think, or you probably will think, there's no such thing. Ghosts don't exist. Yeah, there's no, spirits, or there's no haunting, there's no clairvoyance possible. There's nothing like this, these supernatural things, until you start to open your eyes. And when you open your eyes to the supernatural, then you begin to understand that this world that we live in, this material world, is interpenetrated by a supernatural world. And that supernatural world, far from being kind of a will-o'-the-wisp, a sort of vague dream, is actually more powerful than this world. And you begin to have to learn to work with it and understand it and the entities that live in it. So it's a very important distinction to make. Just because the supernatural world does not obey the physics of the natural world, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't obey the physics of the natural world. That's why you can't study it with natural things like rulers and slide rules and compasses and telescopes and things like this. They don't apply to the supernatural world because it's not natural. It's supernatural, and it obeys a different set of laws or rules. So we're going to look at the natural world now and try to get some kind of understanding. I'm couching this in traditional terms that were used right up until quite recently, last few centuries, because these terms and terminology help us to begin to understand about the supernatural as well. So bear with me on this and we'll take it through. So the natural world manifests at 4 elements or states of matter. The first of these is earth or solid. There you can see it placed there, the earth or solid. And the second is water or liquid. Now what I want you to notice here is that the water can be absorbed by the earth. In fact, it is absorbed by the earth. There's all sorts of creatures and tree roots and things that rely on the fact that there is water in the earth that they can suck up. So the earth is like a sponge, and it can take in water so that the element of water interpenetrates earth. And then the third element is air. And air can not only interpenetrate water, but it can also interpenetrate earth. So the earth and the water and the air are kind of conjoined. And you know that fish breathe air, not water. The air is dissolved in the water. If there's no air in the water, the fish die. And similarly, there are creatures in the earth that breathe the air that is in the earth. If there were no air in the earth, or no air in the water in the earth, then they too would die. So these elements are interpenetrating. And then the fourth element is fire, which the modern term for fire would be plasma. It is actually what fire consists of, the element of fire, and I'd actually done another lecture on this, is charged particles, either electrons or atoms which have lost electrons. And so the electrons are negatively charged and the atoms which have lost electrons are positively charged. And actually, if you have a candle flame and a magnet of the right strength, you can actually bend that candle flame because the candle flame contains charged particles. You maybe didn't realize that. Fire is plasma, and plasma is the modern term for, it's not a gas exactly, it's a volume of charged particles, and it too has a different physics from the physics of air. And that's why there's a lot of mistakes being made in astrophysics today, because they're judging things that they see with telescopes as being results of bangs and winds and explosions, and it's not that. It's not air. It's electrically charged particles, and they have a different physics from air. They have the physics of plasma physics, and they can be contained by magnetic fields. They can form magnetic fields. When charged particles move, they form magnetic fields around them. So there's a totally different physics associated with charged particles. But anyway, what I wanted to show you here is that the fire, that is to say the charged particles, can be dissolved in the air, in the water, and in the earth. So in the water, we know, you meet this with electrolytes. You know, you probably at school you've done something with copper sulfate. You put terminals in there and the current will flow, and there'll be copper deposited on one terminal and taken off another. You've probably done some of this in electrolysis, or you've seen hydrogen and oxygen being separated at the poles that put in to the electrolyte. So you know that the electrically charged particles can exist in water, but they can also exist within solids. You can have, we would not have conductors like copper wire if the electrons were not free to move. Sure, the protons or the copper ions don't move. They oscillate a bit. It's only the electrons move in a wire. But the electrons are plasma as well. So that you do get plasmas moving in solid things as well as in liquids and in gases, and obviously in fire. So that's the natural world. And you can study the physics of all of that. It's very simple. But we will talk about that more probably in some other lectures too. Now I want you to notice something. A typical car, yes, a car, that's Ford Escort, it couldn't get more typical than that, is a machine that exists in the natural world. Well, it doesn't exist anywhere else, does it? It has to have a body. Yes, that's the earth element. In this case made of metal and rubber and other material matters, making the seats and so on. So it is the body is the earth element. And it contains some liquids. Yes, water element really means liquids. And you find liquid in the radiator, you find water in the radiator, and your sprayers that for your windscreens, you find it there. And also you have liquid fuel, and you have, of course, oil in the sump, and you have brake fluids and things like that. So there is also liquid, or the element of water in your car. It must breathe air. Yes, a car won't run if it hasn't got a supply of air. The air element is taken in from the outside and mixed with fuel in the carburetor. I hope you all know that. They draw the air in, they mix it up with the fuel, and they pass that fuel into the cylinders. And it must have a spark of electricity. That's the fire element to ignite the fuel air mix. Yeah, so you have your cylinder here, the mix comes in there, and the spark goes psst, and it goes bang, and it pushes the cylinder, the piston down, and it's doing that, maybe 2,000 times per second, or is it minute? I forget. 2,000 times a minute probably, but it's doing that, and you've got 4 cylinders, or maybe 6 or 8 or even 12, all going together like that, and that generates the power in the car that turns the shaft, and that drives the wheels and makes it go along. You know this. Very simple. But you see that the car is actually a physical object that obeys the laws of physics, the physical world. Fire, earth, air and water used together and processed in this machine. It's an apparatus for transforming energy, and we talked about that in earlier lectures too. In this case, you're transforming fuel and the air into movement of a car, movement of directed movement. And we all know about cars, very, very useful instruments. In order to keep running, it must have a constant supply of fuel, air and sparks. Well, that goes without saying. If any of those things are not present, the car's going to stop. Over time, the car will deteriorate and stop working for good. Yeah, things go wrong with cars, don't they? They rust and the engine wears out and other things wear out, and eventually it becomes too expensive to keep it on the road, and you get rid of it and it gets scrapped. Now then, I thought I'd choose a good example of a human body, hardly at his peak. The human body is the same in many ways. It must eat, take in water and breathe air. For its heart to keep running, there must be enough stored electricity to maintain the spark of life. Now, some of you maybe don't know this, but you have a thing called a bundle of His in your heart that issues electric spark, electric energy that goes down a conducting path into your ventricles and your auricles, and it causes the heart to go shh, 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 shh. And you've got to have that spark keep going. If it's not going, it's not going to beat. So you know what happens. You've seen it on Casualty or whatever other hospital programs you watched on television. Oh, he's arrested. They get out the paddles and they put the paddles on the chest. Boom, and he jumps up in the air and the heart starts beating again, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief. they had to give it some electricity to get it started again. So we humans, we're dependent on electricity. Actually, we run on electricity. You might not realize that because we eat food and we drink water and we drink beer and, we breathe air. Yes, we do all those things, but they make electricity in our body. And it's the electricity that actually drives our muscles and gives us power. So we do work on electricity too. Without these things, the body will die. Yeah, it's got to have food, it's got to have water, it's got to have air, and it's got to have that spark. In any case, it will wear out over time and eventually die. Well, yeah, if you manage to get to 90, you're doing well. Very few people get over 100. So it will wear out and die. Nobody gets out of here alive on this world. Very, very few. Maybe Elijah got out alive, and Enoch. I suppose you could say Jesus, but he went through death first, but then he resurrected. So, yes, you don't get out of here alive, even if you have a body like Arnie at his peak. However, unlike the car, the human being is not just a machine. It also has a supernatural component that we call a soul. Yeah. Your body doesn't have a soul. Your soul has a body, is the right way to put it. So people think, well, I haven't got a soul, I can't feel it. It's not like my big toe. It doesn't exist. Well, yes, it does exist, and you're it. And you have a body, and you, the you that looks out through the eyes, the you that feels things, the you that falls in love, the you that uses the various senses that you have, you that remembers things, that takes in things. You are the soul. You're not the body. You have a body, but you're not the body. And that's one of the first things you have to learn. You're not even your mind. You can lose your mind, but still have a soul. So we'll come to that another time. Our souls belong to the supernatural world and can be analysed in the same way as the physical body. By analogy, it is like the driver of the car. In paintings and other art forms, I'm thinking particularly of sculpture, angels are nearly always shown with wings. That's because they are numinous, they float in the air, like birds do. You can't see them, or mostly you can't, but they can travel through the air. They can also travel through space. So they are flying entities, but they can come to Earth, and they can appear to you if they wish to. This is because they are non-physical beings. The fact that they do not have physical bodies as we do does not mean they do not exist as entities. Yeah, I want to get that clear. Just because they're not physical entities doesn't mean they're not entities. They are numinous, they are subtle, belonging to the supernatural world rather than the natural world. And we'll talk about that now. Their bodies are composed of non-physical materials. They do not eat the same food as we do, but rather draw energy from light. In the beginning was the light. They can do this because they have a subtle body that can take nourishment from the Holy Logos of breath of God. Another name for that is the Holy Ghost. And they are able to breathe or take in this energy, and that keeps them alive, keeps them going. It's like if you had some kind of vehicle that could run on energy you sent it remotely, perhaps microwave energy or something, that it could absorb the microwave energy and carry on working with that. In the garden, and I'm sure maybe some of you have got these as well, I've got these little lights that draw in energy from the sun during the daytime and they come on at night. Yeah, and I got them arranged in various places. So those are not dependent on anything other than light to feed them. The light comes from the sun. So angels are kind of similar in that sense. They can feed off this kind of energy and at different intensities of electromagnetic radiation, as you know. And different levels of angels can feed off different levels, the higher and lower ones. It depends on how strong that angel is, what type of energy they can run on. Can they run on X-rays? Can they run on gamma rays, the cosmic rays? Yeah, things that would kill us, kill maybe or maim other angels that were not geared up for that. But this is, how these hierarchies work. So the supernatural world. We can imagine that the supernatural world also has interpenetrating elements. The lowest of these is spirit or breath. Yes, breath, in Latin, breath is called spiritus. So our word spirit comes from that. Inspire, expire, breathe out. It's all to do with breath. And you'll find that in many different languages and cultures, this idea of spirit and breath being very, very important to our subtle body. And then breath can be suffused with life or electricity, the life force, plasma. So the spirit can be charged up, as it were, with life force, with plasma. Just like the earth could be charged up with water. And that can be suffused with light, carried on the ether. The ether is what carries light waves. I know that physicists like to say that there is nothing that light doesn't go through a medium, doesn't have a medium to transmit it. Well, nothing is transmitted without a medium. You don't get waves without something being waved. So that whatever it is being waved that we call the ether must be the medium. And the light medium, the ether, can be dissolved in plasma, and in fact it is, and into spirit, which is breath. And the light can be suffused with love or the divine joy of God. Now that is something really, I suppose, above my pay grade even, to think about in more than general terms, but you can imagine that just as a radio wave can carry the music that you want to listen to, your radio picks up the wave and it translates the music out of that, and you're able to listen to it. So you can imagine light can carry the wave of love, and carry the wave of all sorts of energies. So that is what the higher divine joy, suffusing the ether or light, is all about, and that can be carried all the way down to the spirit level in the supernatural world. I'm looking at this by analogy, so don't take these ideas totally literally. We're looking at this by analogy. We're trying to get a grasp on the supernatural by comparing it with the natural. And that's a normal way to approach trying to find new knowledge. But it gives us a feeling for what this is all about, what the supernatural world is all about, that you can have entities that run on all these different energies or different matters, gradations of matter, just as your car has all those different gradations of matter and energies working to make it work, so that your supernatural entity, your angel, can also have something similar going on. That's what I want you to grasp here. So if the human body can be likened to a petrol car, then an angel's body has much in common with an electric car. Now I'm going to explain that here. A petrol car has a small, low-capacity battery. This is charged up by an alternator, but ultimately derives its energy from the fuel, petrol or diesel, that is fed into its engine. So you know that. You know you have to have an alternator charging your battery all the time, and the energy is actually stored in the battery, but it's generated when the engine is running. The electricity stored in the battery is enough to start the car and to power the radio and lights for a short time with the engine off. You know that. If you've ever been there, I have. Certainly, you turn the key and it goes, and it won't start. And you keep trying, it won't start. Eventually, the battery runs flat. You've got to call the AA or RAC. That's in England. We had the Automobile Association and the Royal Automobile Club, RAC. They'll send out a van, and the guy will come there and he'll put jump leads on your battery and start the car for you. Because probably the alternator wasn't working properly or something like that. So you know this, the battery can run out and run down. It stores a certain amount of energy, but not a lot of electricity. It's only a little battery. Our bodies are like petrol cars. They store a certain amount of electricity, but only enough for our daily needs. This is generated from the food we eat and the air we breathe. And I've talked about that in other lectures on the college. There's a whole transformational system in our body to turn our food and air and the impressions we receive into a higher energy that our bodies can run on. A Tesla has a very large battery and no engine. It derives its energy from a power source and could be recharged by solar cells. So in other words, a Tesla car, in theory anyway, it could be charged up using solar cells, and it's no petrol in there. There's no ordinary fuel from the natural world. It's taking in light, and it's running on light. Angels and solar cells are light in that they feed on light. It is their food. So angels, like these electric cars, feed on light. Now then, when a person dies, their soul leaves the body. It is like a butterfly leaving a cocoon and taking wing. And you've seen this in films. You've maybe heard about people who've had out-of-body experiences. I've had that myself. People who have near-death experiences, they say how they came out of their body and they looked down and there it was, lying there, and they couldn't understand how they were in two places at once. Without a body, the soul has no energy support system. Yes, your soul has an energy support system from the body. It can no longer eat physical food, and it has no lungs with which to breathe in air. Metabolism ceases. Now just think about that for a minute. Once your soul comes out of the body, it hasn't got this life support system. That's what this body is all about. Yes, it moves around, it can do things, we go to work, we play, we have sex, we do all these things. But ultimately, it's really a life support system for our brain and for our soul. It keeps us alive. As long as it's alive, our higher senses and functions are alive and can function. What happens when we don't have it? It does, that's the soul, it does have a little residual charge. This can maintain consciousness for a short time. In the dreamlike in-between world, it is very much like an angel, but it may not even realize it is dead. Now, I'll tell you something else here. When people first die, they just come out of their body, not long, a few days, they'll very often go around and visit people they know and try to say, hey, I'm here, I'm died. If that person's clairvoyant, then they can talk to them. And I've done this with people who have recently died. That's when they're most contactable. And they want you to know things about what's happened to them, what they would like to see happening perhaps in the physical. They're still very much attached to the earth. At that time, they've got a fair amount of charge that they've taken over with them in their soul. But that begins to run down. This matrix existence may last for years, or maybe only a few days. It all depends on the person. After the residual energy is used up, it must normally seek reincarnation in a new body. Yeah, you go through a second death. Unless you have to find a new body to get into. You need to have a support system to keep you going. Finding a suitable body can be difficult, especially as abortion is so common these days. The newly born baby will normally have no recollection of its past life. However, it will for a time feel close to the angelic world. It may even see angels or other spirits. I put this baby in because it looks very aware, doesn't it? A very pretty baby. It looks very aware. It's seeing something. Forgetting past lives is a blessing. It allows us to have a fresh start, unencumbered by the past, at least consciously. That's why you can't remember your past lives. It's a blessing for you because you're going to live in this one that you're stuck in and you need to get used to it. We need this so that we can develop a new personality or mask, one appropriate to the new circumstances in which we find ourselves. So each time you're born, you're in fresh, different circumstances, different family, different souls around you, different culture perhaps, different language to learn. Yeah, you're going to go through all of this all over again in different circumstances. So you can't be going around thinking, well, I'm a duke. Why aren't they respecting me? I'm a duke. Well, you're not maybe a duke in this world, in this life that you're in. You may be going to be a road sweeper, and you better get used to it. So this is the situation that we find ourselves in life after life after life. Nevertheless, skills we have previously developed in past lives may emerge again as special talents. That's how you get these child prodigies. Play the piano at the age of 3. They can paint fantastic paintings by the time they're 4. They've done it before. The talent is still there, and somehow it can be reawakened and come through. And we all have hidden talents that we brought in. Might be for carpentry, yeah? It might be for bricklaying. Winston Churchill liked bricklaying. Maybe he'd been a bricklayer in the past. I don't know. Maybe he had. We bring these skills with us. It is possible and even necessary for us to break free from the cycle of repetitive lives on earth. Well, that's what religion is really all about. Certainly Christianity. To do so, we must develop a body of light while still alive in the physical body. This is sometimes called the astral body, but is referred to by Jesus as the wedding garment. And I've done a whole program on that. You'll find it on YouTube, talking about the wedding garment and the parable of the wedding garment and the man being thrown out because he wasn't wearing a wedding garment. Very important. Astral actually just means light. Aster, the Latin word star, actually means light. They looked at the stars in heaven not as being other suns, but as being lights. So it's your body of light. You need to have one if you're going to go into heaven. This body has the capacity to take in and store energy from light. It is required if we want to enter heaven. A discarnate soul with an astral body can link into the power grid of the Logos stream. That's what it's all about. That's why you need it. They are then like an angel, only with the full experience of what it means to have been earthbound on the physical plane. So if you have a soul who ascends to heaven with an astral body, links into the power system, they're very much like an angel, only they've got a lot of experience they bring with them that the angels haven't got, of what it means to be a physical being. what it means to have lived on earth. Such souls are very valuable and destined for higher service in the kingdom of heaven. In the meantime, they may do service as guardian angels and spirit guides for those of us still chained to earth. So your guardian angel might be a soul that's been here before themselves. They know what it's like, and now they're helping you, and in helping you, they earn merit. It helps them. So that's why, the whole system works in this way. And when you pass over, it's quite possible you'll be a guardian angel to someone else, if you've got enough development, that is. This is only the briefest introduction to the world of angels. Clearly, there are many gradations of angels, traditionally said to be organized into 3 hierarchies of 3, making 9 choirs in all. You see the 3 hierarchies going up there. All evidence suggests that when souls graduate into heaven, they too can be given a variety of jobs to do, based on their relative development. The choir of advanced souls is called the Communion of Saints. That's what they call it in the Catholic Church, anyway. And think about this. I was saying about the power of the energies that they can run on. Yeah, to be in that topmost choir, the closest to God, they've got to be able to handle very, very high energies. It's the equivalent of handling gamma rays right up there. Would kill anything else. We are protected from these high energies by our magnetic field around the Earth and by our atmosphere. Even X-rays can kill us. Even ultraviolet light can be very bad for us. A certain amount is all right, but too much of it can kill us. So angels, they work on higher energies, and the lower choirs of angels work on the lower energies, the middle ones on the middle energies, and the higher ones on the higher energies. It makes sense, doesn't it? It is also possible for saints to come back into the body on earth in order to give service here. This is a dangerous undertaking, for such advanced souls can also get trapped. We should probably see the apostles, especially Peter, John, Andrew and James, as such returning souls. Very likely they will be back here and now, preparing the way for the second coming. Now I've chosen those 4 because they're the ones that Jesus would take aside with him. For example, they witnessed the transfiguration of him when he's on the mountain. Moses on one side, Elijah on the other. You maybe read that in the Gospels. He also took them with him into the Garden of Gethsemane. They were his close friends, the ones he relied on, his highest apostles. So you can think of that. They already knew him before he came here. Maybe all the apostles did. I think they probably all did. But they were his closest friends that came back here with him. And I've said before, I think John was the prophet Daniel in an earlier life. So you can imagine that perhaps these souls are here in this world somewhere, and maybe we'll have the good fortune to meet them sometime. So my friends, that's the end of this lecture. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget, we now have the invisiblecollege.uk, and you can go there and you'll find lists in different subject areas of lectures on YouTube, and click on the thumbnails and you'll be able to get the lectures. So I look forward to speaking to you again soon, and have a good weekend.